On Friday evening, I made an impromptu visit to Toby's Bar and Grill at approximately 7:30 p.m. After spending the previous 2 days in New York City finalizing negotiations with a major international bank, I was fatigued when the day began. I was pessimistic that we would ever reach an agreement. However, shortly after our Friday meeting began, it seemed that unresolved obstacles began to fall like dominoes. By noon, only 2 stumbling blocks remained. We decided to take a break and go have lunch. I found the nearest Jewish deli and ordered a pastrami and Swiss cheese on rye bread, which I enjoyed. When we reconvened at 1, George Willis, the bank's lead negotiator, asserted that significant headway had been made. He proposed a compromise on the remaining 2 points. George passed the document across the conference table, and I perused it. While it did not precisely divide the difference, it was within the realm of what my colleagues and I could accept to secure this substantial contract. I affixed my initials to the page, and George stated he would email me the official contract on Monday. After shaking hands, we parted ways. I proceeded in different directions, returning to my hotel, packing my belongings, and checking out. I contemplated remaining in the city for the night, as my fiancée, Trish, was absent for the weekend, accompanying her 2 older sisters. They visited one of Connecticut's expansive Indian casinos, where they planned to spend their days at the pool and spa and their evenings at the most notable bars and restaurants. Instead of spending another night away from home, I proceeded to Grand Central Station and took the Metro North train to New Haven by 7. On the 30th, I was on I-91 toward Hartford and exited the highway. I proceeded through the always popular downtown West Hartford, where I decided to stop for dinner. I was sitting at Toby's Bar when I noticed my 2 future daughters-in-law through the bar mirror sliding into a horseshoe-shaped table. Their husband settled down next to them. The immediate knot in my stomach and the pain that seemed to spread through every inch of my body indicated that my wedding plans, which were exactly 8 weeks away, were in trouble. I had been at the bar with Trish, who was supposed to be at the casino with me. I left the bar and called Trish, who answered. "Hello," she said. "How are you doing in the big city?" "Everything seems to be the same as always. I have completed successful negotiations, and I am heading to dinner. I wish you were with me. You are very attractive, Chris. I miss you too. We had a great day. We lounged by the pool and drank cocktails. I enjoyed it very much. I am scheduled to meet my sisters for dinner in a few minutes." Trish and I engaged in further conversation before exchanging "I love you" and concluding the call. I accessed the Find My Phone application and entered Trish's information. I am uncertain about Trish's whereabouts, but her phone number was in Falmouth, Massachusetts, on the western tip of Cape Cod. I was perplexed by this discovery. My neighbor and friend, Nick Fleury, owned a family home in Falmouth. I was invited there on several occasions. Upon consulting my contact information, I located Sue Faherty's phone number and proceeded to call her. She answered, and I greeted her. I then stated my name and said, "Sue, this is Chris Harrington." I was surprised to hear her response, which was, "How are the wedding plans going?" I informed her that Nick and I were unable to attend. "I would advise you to wait for the festivities to commence. I must confess that I am unsure as to the current status of the plans." Sue responded with a laugh, indicating that she found this response typical of a male. She then inquired as to whether Nick had traveled during the weekend. This was a somewhat unusual question, given that Nick rarely has to travel at the weekends. However, this weekend he was away. Sue then asked if I had any further information. Her voice betrayed slight concern. "My phone application on your phone, Sue," prompted an involuntary outburst of emotion, as she began to sob and whisper, "Not again." A minute later, she continued, "He should be in Philadelphia, but the beacon shows that he is in his family's cottage," with a sad sigh. I offered my condolences, and Sue proceeded to share that Nick and Trish were there together. She wept quietly for several minutes, and this was not the first time she had experienced such a situation. She finally admitted that she would call her son and instruct him not to return home. "I would like to request your assistance, Sue. Trish is not scheduled to return until Sunday afternoon, and Nick will not be home until tomorrow. I suggest postponing our confrontation until tomorrow evening. In the meantime, I will change the locks on my condominium doors and withdraw half of the wedding money from I will transfer all of her belongings from her joint account to another account in my name." "You are correct, Chris. I will do the same." Please contact me via email or telephone if you require assistance. I am sorry for having to inform you of this situation. Sue began to weep once more and, between sobs, stated that it was not your fault. My final communication was with Billy Jones, a friend of mine. Neighbor, I require assistance. Billy, will you be home tomorrow morning? My only plans are to sleep until noon, but Sally will wake me up at 7 a.m. What can I do for you? Can you change the locks on my front door and the door leading out of the garage and change the code on your garage door opener? I will be very grateful. There was a moment of silence before Billy stated that the wedding is cancelled unless I am unaware of something important. Trish and I are deceased. I understand. I will do this first thing in the morning and change everything. Fitz, yes. Billy, thank you. I felt 20 years older as I returned to Toby's and proceeded towards the bar. I observed my reflection in the mirror, which reflected the image of my daughter. As the waiter cleared away the appetizers, I proceeded to the table of the former in-laws and took a seat. I observed the atmosphere with a critical gaze, directed between Julie and Karen. The atmosphere became noticeably cooler. Steve, Karen's husband, gestured to the menu. I declined, stating that I would not be staying long. I continued to observe Julie and Karen in silence until Roy, Julie's husband, inquired about the situation. I responded to Steve, ask your Roy, and Steve turned to their wives. It was evident that both women were terrified. Steve inquired about the situation. Karen was the first to speak. It's not what you think, she said. I guess that's exactly what I think. Steve and Roy looked from their wives to me as tears streamed down their faces. Steve inquired once more, what is occurring? Chris, your wives are providing false testimony on Trish's behalf. They were all present in my kitchen on the previous Tuesday. Since I was going to be absent until Sunday, they were planning to visit Foxwoods Casino for the weekend. Where is Trish? Roy inquired of the sisters. They remained silent. He then turned and looked at me. She's at Nick's house on Cape Cod, he stated. That is true, Steve hissed at that moment. Both women were crying. Aeon nodded in agreement. Julie sobbed. Trish loves you, Chris, Steve said. She really loves it, he added. Steve then rolled his eyes, and Roy stared at the tabletop. She has it is an effective method of demonstrating affection. She and her sisters are providing false information, and she is going to spend a weekend with an old neighbor, engaging in sexual activity. This is occurring just 8 weeks before she is to marry me. Your sister is untrustworthy. Do not speak further on the matter. Roy interrupted his wife, instructing her to cease speaking. Julie turned to me and inquired about my intentions. Are you intending to proceed with the wedding? I am going to cancel the wedding. Both friends leaned back in their chairs, their wives crying even more. Daddy spent so much money on the wedding and reception, Karen sobbed. I don't care. I'm not going to marry a lying, cheating woman like Trish. I waited a few moments. I discussed the matter of Nick's infidelity with Trish with Soufflery. We both felt that 24 hours was insufficient time to resolve the issue. As I addressed Roy and Steve, 4 pairs of eyes were fixed upon me. I requested their assistance, asking them to ensure that my wife did not contact Trish before 6 o'clock. The following evening, both women began to protest. Steve then stated, of course we can, before turning to his wife and saying, you disgust me. This prompted Karen to wonder if her sisters had ever supported her while Steve was unfaithful to her. Steve then said, if you were Julie, get involved with Trish in any way. I will consider filing for divorce. Roy's face turned red with anger, and his words caused Julie to groan sadly as he said, after the problems we had at the outset of our 3rd year of marriage, I was in a position to file for divorce. However, I am resolved to pursue this course of action if you contact Trish. I shook hands with both men and took my leave of the restaurant. Saturday was a busy day. It took me several hours to remove the last traces of Trish from our house. Instead of piling filled garbage bags in the driveway, I rented a small storage unit. My neighbor Billy lent me his pickup truck. It only took 3 trips to get all. The most challenging aspect of this process was drafting the letter to our wedding guests. I divided the task into manageable segments throughout the day and sent the message via email. The letter detailed the recent developments surrounding the Harrington and Clark nuptials and expressed my gratitude to those who had extended their support. The weekend proved to be a pivotal point in my journey. I came to learn that Trish had spent her time away from me with another individual. This revelation was a significant blow to my emotional state. Furthermore, Nick's wife, Sue, aided by her sisters, Trish, Karen, and Julie, and their collective falsehoods, enabled the couple to spend the weekend together on Cape Cod. One might inquire as to why I find this behavior noteworthy. The reason is straightforward: I am not married to Trish. It is considerably more straightforward to cancel a wedding than to endure the pain of divorce. This letter serves as my official notice of cancellation of my wedding to Trish Clark. Sincerely, Christopher Harrington. I contacted Sue Fleury at 5, on the 30th of the month at 1800 hours. We informed each other of the tasks we had completed. Sue was married, which made it more challenging for her to end her relationship with Nick. She was able to consult with a lawyer and had an appointment scheduled for Monday morning. The lawyer advised her to cancel joint credit cards and separate family finances as much as possible. This is standard legal advice in the event of a divorce. Our call ended a few minutes before 1800 hours. M and I agreed to send our guests a message at 6 a.m. sharp. My message simply stated that I hoped they would enjoy their weekend with Nick. It also thanked them for demonstrating to me and the world that they were untruthful and unscrupulous. It informed them that our wedding was cancelled. I sent the message at exactly 6 p.m. I promptly disseminated the information via email to our family and guests. 16 months later, I stood on the edge of the altar. My best men and groomsmen flanked me, and the bridesmaids looked stunning as they walked down the center aisle of the church. Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked towards the back of the church. Trish's father stood proudly, dressed in his the groom, attired in a black tuxedo, had eyes that reflected those of the other guests, who were focused on the bride. She was the epitome of beauty, with blonde hair styled in a small white veil. Her blue eyes sparkled with love, and her dark red lips suggested wicked thoughts about the upcoming wedding night. She was clad in a tight white wedding dress. Her heavenly figure was emphasized without making her look immodest. It was a wonderful sight to behold as Mr. Clark and my fiancée walked down the aisle towards me. I felt a pair of eyes boring a hole into me. I looked around at the guests on my side of the church before looking at the bride's side. That is when I saw Trish, tears rolling down her cheeks. I saw her say quietly, "I'm sorry. I extend my apologies in advance for the abrupt change in narrative." Before she turned to her father and young sister, who were advancing towards me, I encouraged subscribers to our channel to ensure their second-chance partners would not engage in infidelity. I proceed to present the subsequent account, which is of a more salacious nature than the preceding one. Readers under the age of 18 should refrain from accessing the following account.